We've got some great questions today. The main one is on pudding sauce. Thanks for joining us today on Questions and Answers with James Townsend and Son. Here's a great one. It's from Thursday the next. It's on that latest episode we did on the bread pudding in the Dutch oven. And it is no nutmeg? I figure that it has to do with the fact that they use nutmeg in so many recipes that sometimes they just forgot to write it down. And nutmeg would be a great addition to this particular recipe. This is on that same episode. It's Maria Elena. I love that recipe. Do you know the modern oven temperature and timing? 350 degrees in a modern oven, probably, let's say 30 minutes to 45 minutes. You'll have to watch it. You might try, it might dry out in a modern oven, so you might want to do that with a water bath in the oven with it. This is Zach Tyler, and it's on the roast beef episode. He says, on the subject of small beer, is there a way to simulate it? And last Q&A, we talked about small beers and different beers in the 18th century. I didn't reference a substitute for small beer in that episode directly, and a light beer will probably work just fine. If you don't want to use an alcoholic beverage, you could use a straight cider or something like that. Really, the liquid isn't quite as important as the fact that you're using a liquid and you're getting that off the bottom of the pan. This one is from the White Pot episode that we did several years ago. It's Mona Lisa, and it's I'm a history and food mechanics lover. Your working set is so charming. Are the black vessels antiques in the background next to your oven? Everything that you see there in the oven area, in fact, almost all the cooking vessels we use are items that we sell that are in our print catalog on our website. So all those pots, all those copper pans, the frying pans, all that stuff is available through our catalog. On the first Dutch oven baking one where we did the bread a couple of weeks back, this is Kevin Hurt. He says, how long was the bread in the Dutch oven? It depends on the temperature, but generally in that 30-minute range, maybe 35 to 40 minutes, depending on just how warm you've got that. You can always go in and check it. If it looks like it needs more, then give it more. This is from the bread series we did many years ago. There was an episode where we talked about yeasts, and this one was from the episode called Which Yeast? This is Warlock 1422. Does wild yeast make bread taste any different from other yeast? Yes, not necessarily because of the taste of the yeast itself, although partially, but what comes with the yeast. And in a wild yeast situation, you're usually bringing along other things with the yeast, other kinds of bacteria, and they will usually create a sourdough-like taste or a sour bread because it takes longer for those wild yeasts to react with the sugars than modern commercial yeasts. And so while those wild yeasts are trying to get a foothold, other things are going on there and you're getting other bacteria, and they're also adding to the leavening that's going on. So that's where that kind of different taste is coming in at. On the last Q&A, this is from Bo Myron. He says, I have a question about facial hair, particularly beards in the 18th century. Would some men have had facial hair or a beard? Or was clean shaven the preferred look? It depends on the ethnicity or the ethnic group of the individual. English and probably Americans were much more likely to be clean shaven. In fact, the English almost always were clean shaven all through this time period until you get to a much later time period. Other nationalities, ethnicities are going to have different traditions for facial hair, and you'll definitely see those in paintings and see other references to that. There's a funny story. There was one of the reenactors we talked to. He was, I think it was Last of the Mohicans. He was a reenactor who was going to be in the movie as a, sort of a background extra soldier. And they had all these guys report to casting, and immediately the makeup people said, "Oh, everybody with facial hair, shave it off. No more mustache, no more beard." And this guy had a mustache he'd had for years and years and years and years. So he went ahead and shaved it off. And then they started dividing up these soldiers. He said, "Okay, you guys are British, you guys are French." So he got sent into the French contingent, and they immediately sent him to makeup over there, and they pasted a mustache right on him. So you're going to see definitely different kinds of facial hair going on with different nationalities, ethnicities. Sometimes definitely you'll see French or even German, and definitely Russians and possibly Jewish people definitely having different kind of facial hair. Sometimes even in the caricatures, like the cartoons, you'll know that a character is a particular ethnicity because of either their clothing or their facial hair. This one's from the roast beef episode. It's Andy Thorpe. "Hi John, I love your videos. You always keep me interested. I have a question about cooking in Dutch ovens back in the 18th century. How did they know when something was up to temperature?" It's a really good question. And that really has to do with getting a good gauge about a feel for it. You really have to get experience with that. Since they didn't have the same kind of temperature tools that we've had, they would go through the same routine about heating up their oven. I'm going to use this many coals. I'm going to wait this long before I put the pie in or whatever they're cooking. And then they would more than likely just gauge the temperature by getting their hand very close to it and knowing what that kind of temperature feels like. That's really in the time period, that's really the only best choices they had. With other kinds of tools, they possibly had other ways of knowing when it was up to temperature. Like in an oven, when the soot cooks off, it's at a certain temperature. In a Dutch oven, you don't have those same kind of clues, so you really just have to gauge it by your experience and by just getting your hand close, not touching it, but getting your hand close and feeling that temperature. And here's the main question. It's from that latest bread pudding episode. This is Peter L., Custom History. Great one. I enjoyed it as always. There's a question about the sauce. Did any of the original recipes suggest the use of rum instead of brandy or sack? Well, we haven't found any recipes that specifically suggest using rum, but I think it's an easy conjecture to go there. As you can see, even in the idea of brandy and sack, we found recipes that both call for sack, call for rum, or call for brandy, and rum would be a great substitute for brandy. In fact, they probably used any number of interesting spirits depending on what they had available and what their tastes were like. Kevin was doing some digging just recently and he found another reference, and this one had a very similar pudding sauce that was made with butter, molasses, and a little bit of vinegar. So there's even another kind of a flavor difference that you might get. So there's a lot of variation about what you can do with this pudding sauce, and it really turns out very interesting. Definitely make some of this pudding sauce if you're going to make any of these puddings. It is wonderful stuff. We've got some really exciting announcements coming up very soon. We're working on a lot more content here. I really want to thank everyone for your wonderful questions, your amazing comments, your encouragement, your sharing the videos. Everything you do helps us out so much, so I want to thank you for that, and I want to thank you for watching. If you're a new viewer and you haven't subscribed, press the subscribe button up here. That'll take you to a spot where you can subscribe. I want to thank everyone for watching.